Batman: Mask of the Phantasm is coming back to theaters for one night only on November 12th, and we figured, why haven't we talked more about this work of art? Mask of the Phantasm is an animation masterpiece, change my mind. It's considered by many to be one of the best Batman films, live action or otherwise, ever made. Despite it bombing at the box office during its original Christmas 1993 release, the film gained a cult following in the years to come, and its connection to and natural affiliation with the iconic Batman the Animated Series boosted its reputation to the cinematic classic it is today. I mean, I definitely like it a lot, but I'm me, so. However, when it comes to trying to watch the animated series in chronological order, there has long been a debate among fans about when exactly to watch the Mask of the Phantasm movie. Many choose to watch it before the entirety of the series. Batman is working solo, the police don't fully trust him, the Joker has no henchmen to speak of, and the plot of the film revolves around a Batman Year One style origin for the Dark Knight. But others, such as us fine boys at the Watchtower Database, prefer a more analytical approach, nerdily attempting to find as close to an accurate chronological placement for the movie as possible. When Mask of the Phantasm first ran in theaters, and for many years afterward, there were no plans or hints toward the larger animated universe that would unfold with shows like Superman, Batman Beyond, Static Shock, Justice League, or, of course, the Zeta Project. All we had was Batman the Animated Series and its tie-in comics. So without the context of any of the later produced shows, movies, comic books, or other materials, the timeline confusion made sense. The Batman show was initially developed as having a timeless feel to it, and as such the style and atmosphere was dripping with noir aesthetic originating from the 1940s and 50s, while the technology of the world Batman inhabited was more equivalent to that of the 80s or 90s. In fact, when the Phantasm film debuted, the New York Times even stated it was set in the 1940s, and with all the film's pop culture references appearing relevant to this time period.
Thinking of looking up some old friends?
He looks more like the ghost of Christmas future.
It's identical down at Ben Franklin's stubble.
Honey, I'm home!
There's still nothing specific in the movie itself in terms of giving us an actual year or even a decade. As we know from our research on Batman the Animated Series, see countless past videos on the channel, the cartoon show roughly occurs during the DC Animated Universe's 1992 to 1996, more specifically being fully concluded by Dick Grayson's college graduation and subsequent Bat family resignation in January 1997. This is all, of course, in the face of the showrunners' many attempts to insist that they never put a date on the shows. Between magazine covers, driver's licenses, giant checks, car registrations, it's plain to see that the universe Mask of the Phantasm takes place in is set in said universe's version of the 1990s. So to the New York Times, I say,
You are fake news.
so we're already off to a pretty good start. There's that decade narrowing for you already, really 5 years. But of course, this is us, so how could we not keep going from here? In Batman's New Batman Adventures official biography, we get an interesting bit of info I can't help but point out. Batman's final case as a solo agent brought him face to face with Gotham's former protector, the bloodthirsty vigilante called the Reaper. This is the only time in the DCAU's history when we have any mention of the Reaper whatsoever. This villainous character first appeared in Batman number 237 in 1971 and looks, well, almost exactly like the Phantasm, I'm sure you've noticed. Could this mean the bio is meant to say Phantasm instead? Well, despite the visual similarities, Bruce Timm and company have dismissed the notions of Phantasm's design being an homage to this character, and that Phantasm was actually more based on Spider-Man's Mysterio than anything. In fact, the blade on Phantasm's hand wasn't added until late in the design process per Alan Burnett's insistence. So the idea of the Reaper mentioned in Batman's biography being a typo of some kind starts to lose its validity. Couple this with the very next sentence in that bio. Soon after, the Batman's life was changed once more when he adopted Dick Grayson, which from prior research we know happened shortly after Bruce became Batman in the first place, which we see in Mask of the Phantasm's flashbacks 10 years prior to the film's main events. So Phantasm and Reaper being one and the same doesn't add up, meaning Batman fought someone strikingly similar to the Phantasm years before he fought the Phantasm. Maybe that's a topic for the vanishing point. Anyway, that doesn't really help us after all. So let's turn to our recent video on Batman's age throughout the DCAU. Here we establish that he was most likely born between 1961 and 1963, and if we continue to hold his TNBA biography to be canonical, we're told that he left Gotham City to train worldwide at the age of 18 and returned years later. This means he'd be 20 years old at the youngest by the time he meets Andrea in the movie's flashbacks, placing those scenes in 1981 at the absolute earliest, the present-day scenes from the movie now for sure being 1991 at the earliest.
Can't believe it's been 10 years.
But James, you may say, I thought you said the animated series started in 1992. How can the movie be in 1991?
Well, I mean, there's lots of video left, so hold your bat horses. Right now, for all we know, the movie could take place before the series. Cue fans that want to believe that celebrating. But let's keep digging. In the new Batman Adventures episode, Beware the Creeper, we're told the night the episode occurs is the 7-year anniversary of when an unnamed Prior Valestra gang mobster was transformed into the Joker. According to the affiliated Lost Years comic, 850 days passed between Dick Grayson's graduation and the start of the new Batman Adventures, plopping us in May of 1999 for the start of that cartoon. For the math on that, just click the thing. Click the thing right there. There it is. Time to click. Or you can finish this video first. You could do both. Assuming this episode could take place any time in the span of the series, May 1992, 7 years prior, is now the earliest the Joker can become the Joker. So, with one line from Jeff Bennett,
7 years ago, this very night, the clown prince of crime, the Joker, was born on this spot.
aka Dexter's dad, aka Johnny Bravo, aka the Dave the Barbarian narrator, aka 10,000 other things, we've officially eliminated the possibility that the movie occurs before the show. Whew, sorry guys.
Well, you're wrong.
So now we have a gap of May 1992 to January 1997 for the movie's placement. That's still a pretty big gap. 4.5 years in which Batman v Phantasm Dawn of Weird Romance plot could happen. But let's flip over to the pages of Batman and Robin Adventures Annual Number 1. This comic acts as pretty much a direct sequel to Mask of the Phantasm. It explains how Andrea and Joker escape death at the end of the movie, it explains what happened to Arthur Reeves following his Joker toxin injection, and it gives us this nice nugget of info. The events of the movie took place 3 years ago. With January 1997 being our cutoff for adventures in this era, 3 years prior would place us in January 1994, our new latest possible date for the movie. Now we're down to this slightly lovelier version of the Phantasm timeline, but there's gotta be something else we can use to narrow it down even further. This is really stressing me out.
James, Jimmy, Jimothy. How many times do I have to tell you to let me handle the simple math? It's part of my name. For those of you unaware, the bat signal is first introduced in the episode The Cape and Cowl Conspiracy.
Got a new toy, I see.
This is the 31st episode of the series, and while we've previously established that Batman the Animated Series episodes don't always necessarily occur in chronological order, this is the first time we see the bat signal in the series, even by air date. And we know that at the very least, this is after Batman switches to his second costume, since that's pretty much the entire point of the episode. We'll break down the Batman the Animated Series timeline as a whole in future videos, but for now, we can safely assume this episode takes place after On Leather Wings, the series debut. Why? Well, On Leather Wings shares a large plot point with Mask of the Phantasm, in that both stories focus on a case of mistaken identity, leading Gotham lawmakers and politicians alike to think Batman is a criminal. When Batman is blamed for Man-Bat's crimes, the police, for the most part, assume the worst. The vigilante is not to be trusted, and they go after him in force. But when Batman is blamed for the Phantasm's murders, the bat signal is lit to try and get him to come to the police department and speak out his case. Another big reason the police don't use the bat signal in On Leather Wings? It doesn't exist yet. The show's writer's Bible initially stated there would be no bat signal or hotline in this animated series at all. And being the first episode produced, it stands to reason that this would be true for On Leather Wings at the very least. In terms of timeline clues we can gather from the first episode, notes on the Bat computer tell us it's currently July. And while this doesn't seem like much,
It's not much. It's nothing.
There are a few things we can gather when viewed in the context of the second volume of the Batman Adventures comic. In issue number 12, we're told that Hamilton Hill served as mayor of Gotham for 2 terms before losing to the Penguin, which is said earlier in the run to have happened in December. I'll save the timeline explanation of this comic series for a later video because we just like to tease things all the time, but for the most part, it occurs during the run of Justice League, which we already know from past research takes place between 2000 to 2002. Being that a mayor's term is typically 4 years long, this means Hill would have become mayor in December of 1992, 93, or 94. Since he's already mayor by July in On Leather Wings, we can conclude 1992 is not possible placement for the episode, and since Harvey Dent isn't Two-Face yet, we can conclude July 1994 wouldn't work either, since as we've discussed in the past, he becomes Two-Face in May of that year. I know this might be a little hard to follow, and that we're assuming you've seen like every other video on the channel, but we're trying to keep our videos at least a sort of reasonable length here. Anyway, since the bat signal has to come into use after the Man-Bat mishap before the Phantasm movie, this leaves us with a gap of July 1993 to January 1994 for both the movie and technically the Cape and Cow conspiracy, if you care about that part at all. Additionally, within the film, we get Chucky Saul referencing the month of March as being in the future.
$750 million by March. Anybody got a problem with that?
And the weather seems to correlate with fall or winter, such as the use of heavy jackets in the presence of dead trees, which could close the gap even further to starting sometime around late September of 1993. And finally, and perhaps the most who cares way of looking at things, if we take the movie's mentions of 10 years passing as literally as possible, the gap closes even further due to fall imagery in the flashbacks, thus likely ruling out January 1994 because fall 1984 to January 1994 is only 9 years and 3 months, give or take. And then it closes even further when we take into consideration that there were scenes cut from the film but included in the novelization that placed Dick Grayson in college at the time, meaning the movie would likely occur before winter break, which started sometime in mid-December. So when all is said and done, Batman Mask of the Phantasm takes place on the DCAU timeline sometime between September to mid-December of 1993, with the flashbacks occurring around that time of year in 1983, and the movie could safely be watched right after the Cape and Cow conspiracy.
And Maddie's segment is over. Now that we have the answer, let's quickly address some weird continuity issues that might find themselves wedged in your subconscious and wake you up in the middle of the night.
Where was Robin during the movie?
Well, as we mentioned, in the book versions, he's said to be off at college. So there.
If Harvey Dent isn't Two-Face yet during Mask of the Phantasm, why isn't he present for Arthur Reeves' bat bashing?
Well, we do know the episode Pretty Poison, Poison Ivy's debut, occurs in 1993 as well, and since Batman saved Harvey from a poisonous death, it's likely Harvey wouldn't side against him.
Where's Harley Quinn?
Well, according to back issue number 99, Bruce Timm and Ellen Burnett implored writer Paul Dini to not include her in the movie as they wanted the Joker to come off as more of a menacing solo threat. Though her absence can also be explained by the fact that, timeline-wise, she isn't Harley Quinn yet, since we know Joker was active for years before Harley came around.
And perhaps most importantly, if that one lady was so mad at Bruce that she splashed wine in his face, then why did she attend a clown-themed casino with the guy later?
The most mysterious creatures in the universe. Sorry? Women.
And now you know the rest of the story. Thank you for watching, everybody. Which section of the DCAU timeline would you like to see us cover next? If you'd like to vote for next month's video on our Patreon, you can head on over to the link in the description. October's winner is just around the corner. And of course, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on other upcoming content from the Watchtower Database. Why am I in my car? Well, it's a funny story. You see,